Hey internets, it's Gamerant time. Now that the madness I had to deal with on some family health issues over the holidays last month has finally subsided, I can finally get back to making more than one video a month. Today will be some Zenki gameplay, a sort of underrated SNES gem that was ahead of its time. And the rant topic shall be alt tech. So anyways, one of the methods to get around the censorship of the establishment in the cathedral that big tech often finds itself being boiled alive in is to use alt tech. However, there is one big problem to this. There's a lot of alt tech sites out there, and a lot of them admittedly kind of suck. So in this video, I'm going to remedy this problem by recommending some alt tech that are actually, somewhat worth using. Some of these you may have heard of, but I am intentionally including a few in here that not everyone has. So stick around and you might find something worthwhile that you didn't even know existed. I would also like to explain the biggest reason why you should support alt tech, because a lot of people get that one wrong. The truly big reason to support alt tech actually isn't censorship. Censorship is important, but it's not the #1 issue. But I will save that for the end of this rant and just get into what you all probably clicked on this video for. So I'd like to first start out with alternatives to Reddit, also known as Plebit, which has dominated the internet culture of discussion forums in the last decade. There are a lot of problems with Reddit, aside from the fact that the admins have increasingly abused their site's success to impose some pretty darn ridiculous and draconian rules site-wide, and also they've made some pretty poorly defined censorship rules that don't really make a whole lot of sense, and they don't really seem to enforce them evenly across the site. Reddit's overall design is something I have found to be also kind of a disgusting upvote-seeking midwit factory. The upvote system ensures that just about every single board is a cancerous echo chamber, where stating the most fashionable correct opinion trademark is the fastest way to earn karma. There are a few good boards on Reddit, but a lot of them just aren't. So here are some decent alternatives. First off is just classic style Invisionboards. Yes, these things from the late 90s and early 2000s, as a matter of fact, still exist, and still have dedicated user bases. And yes, the discussion that goes on in many of them is significantly less cucked and more relaxed than what you will find on Reddit. The only downside is that they can be hard to find because of them being decentralized. So to help that out, I will be including a handy website in the description below that lets you find some forums that are using this technology. Unexplained Mysteries and Doomworld are two boards I've found to be particularly good. There are also similar forums that don't use Invisionboard technology, but operate on the same concept in that they are a decentralized forum system that are usually unique to that specific website, such as Newgrounds or the New Zealand bird farming community. Another alternative to discussion boards that is slightly less known is Overchan. Overchan provides a list of Futaba and 2chan style image boards with tons of discussion that lies very much outside the reaches of big tech censorship, or any censorship at all for that matter. Yeah, quick warning about Overchan is that you will find content here that is deliberately shocking. Do not go to this place at work. You will find extreme content here, but you will also find some pretty based content and some pretty interesting content. And again, Overchan is one of those places where you can find some information that you can't find anywhere else. And last I will mention is Scored. This is basically a clone of Reddit, but with less overarching censorship. It has the same echo chamber problem as Reddit does due to the upvote system, but it does have users, and the more Plebit imposes idiotic and subjective censorship standards, the more Scored will grow. Many subboards that will get banned from Reddit can now be found in the Scored community, so that alone is worth checking it out. If you have a community that you used to go to on Reddit that has been banned, a lot of times it will now be on Scored. Next up is alternatives to Discord. And you might be wondering, why do you need an alt tech to Discord? It was not too long ago that Discord itself was considered alt tech, and I hear all the time people saying that Discord doesn't hardly ever ban any channels no matter what is posted. Well, the problem is that Discord staff tends to follow a culture I like to call anarcho-tyranny, which means that they may selectively moderate and selectively ban communities that they do not like, just because those communities have opinions that they disagree with by subjectively interpreting their own TOS. This is why I occasionally go through my own Discord channel and clean stuff up, because I know it will not last if I don't do that. As it grows, I'll probably have to get more moderators for it just because of this problem. Anyways, the best alternative is by far Telegram. I haven't really heard of anyone getting banned from Telegram, and so it's a pretty good site to keep in touch with any community that is targeted by cancel culture. So this serves as an excellent group chat platform where you can find plenty of users without much worry. That's the main use of Telegram. The only downside is the lack of networking, making it hard to find groups and Telegram channels. So I will now teach you a trick on how to get around this problem. Use Brave search. Use the following format. The search terms for the community you want to find, space, t.me, space, Telegram. For instance, right here I have politics, space, t.me space telegram. This tends to make it so at least a few of the results that you get will be related to a group you're wanting to find. Replace the word politics with whatever you are searching for. There is also Guilded. Now, Guilded is basically just a clone of Discord. It doesn't really add anything new, but it is slightly more geared towards gaming and with more privacy from what I can tell. Its main use is that if a Discord channel you like gets banned via said anarcho-tyranny, there is a chance that they may just remake their server on Guilded, the quartering being one such example of this happening. And now finally an alternative Discord, another one that a lot of people might not know, especially people under the age of 20, is IRC. Yes, IRC is still used. IRC is old as dirt and not anywhere near as user-friendly as anything else I'm mentioning in this video, so I would recommend IRC as kind of a last resort backup. However, it is still worth it to have an IRC client like HexChat or something, because there are still certain little tidbits of knowledge, especially from way back in the days of the early internet, that you absolutely cannot find anywhere else except buried on some IRC channel. So it is actually worth it to learn how to use it. And now I would like to go over some alt tech on YouTube. Now, YouTube censorship isn't nearly as harsh as Reddit or some other sites, and the algorithm isn't quite as biased as some people think it is. The main problem I found is that YouTube engages in far too much whitelisting, which means giving special treatment to channels that are on the Cathedral Good Boy list, mostly comprised of mainstream media channels, but there are also some private normie tier channels that I suspect are on the whitelist as well. This is particularly annoying when you are trying to search for something related to news and politics that you want to watch. What does YouTube search algorithm do? Well, that's right, all the top 20 search results or so whenever you're looking for anything are always mainstream Cathedral elite channels, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, MSNBC again, and CNN again. I'm sure anyone who's actually tried to search for anything news related on YouTube has kind of seen this problem in the last 6 years or so when they changed the algorithm to do this. Because often these biased results that you see coming from the whitelisted channels, of course, often have absolutely nothing to do with what you searched for, so you can't find any videos that you want. The same problem can also be seen in the videos recommended. Whitelisted content is given a boost. For this reason, the best alternative that I don't think gets enough attention is Odysee. I keep seeing praises for BitChute, but honestly, as far as usability and content goes, Odysee has it a lot better than them. That's not to say BitChute isn't worth using. They are both decent backups of some content you currently can't find anywhere else. However, when I want to actually find something worth watching just for myself, I find myself usually just going to Odysee. Plus, BitChute has the problem of a lot of less popular videos either taking forever to load, or they just flat out don't load. And also, Odysee has a pretty good site design. You have a bunch of categories on the bar to the left, and the algorithm does a decent job of recommending independent content creators instead of just, you know, MSNBC, CNN, Cathedral Good Boys, etc, etc, etc. Then there is Rumble, which recently improved their site design. I actually originally wasn't going to give them very much praise because the previous design of Rumble from last year was a cluster fail in my opinion. It was really hard to find anything worthwhile watching on Rumble, but they actually just recently changed it, so if you didn't like Rumble before, I actually recommend you go over to Rumble now and see what they've changed. The last one I will mention here is one that not everyone knows about, and that's PeerTube. Now, PeerTube is best described as the mastodon of video sites, in that it is decentralized and not just one site. It's more of a technology that allows people to create their own video sites for streaming if they want to. PeerTube is something that you probably shouldn't use that often just yet. It is actually kind of hard to find anything you really want, but you should still keep it saved in your bookmarks as a last resort if any content becomes unfindable anywhere else. It doesn't have much of a community, and I only mention it because how the technology works makes it so that it's pretty much uncancelable, and that alone makes it worth mentioning. And now for some alt tech to Facebook and Twitter. Both Facebook and Twitter were guilty of allowing FBI agents to influence them on what to censor and what not to. Oof, that was a big one. Honestly, no one should be surprised that the FBI was involved on that. That was one of those things that's pretty obvious to anyone with some common sense. And that alone is good enough reason to support alt tech over Facebook and Twitter. But what really are the alternatives? There are a bunch out there like Parler, Getter, and Trump's new, I guess we can still call it new platform, Truth Social. And then there is also Minds. They are worth bookmarking, but which is actually worth using? The answer to that, I have to go with Gab. Gab isn't perfect, and due to how it was created, it can be somewhat of an echo chamber, but the main reason I think Gab is the one worth signing up for the most is really just site design and mission. Andrew Torba, the CEO of Gab, in case you didn't know, may be a bit of a fruit case, but what he is trying to do, which is create a viable parallel internet economy, is commendable and absolutely should be supported just on that principle alone. The user interface design of Gab is also quite good. It's pretty easy to find groups, everything you want is at the top of the website, it's fairly modern and fairly decent. It has its own video service, it's easy to edit your privacy options, and there are plenty of users who are fairly based. It has features of both Facebook and Twitter combined as well. The only problem with Gab that I don't like is that for some really odd reason, and this is kind of more of a community thing, people use the pro feed to have actual discussions rather than the groups. People in groups mostly just spam new topics over and over again and hardly ever reply to everyone else's spam. I'm not sure why Gab's community is like this. I'm not sure why they would rather have group-based discussion in the pro feed rather than in actual groups, but hey, to each their own. But at least a community does exist, and there are plenty of users there you can find. Anyways, now for that reason I gave at the start of the video about why you should support alt tech, which again, the biggest reason is not actually censorship. I consider censorship to be the second most important reason, but the more important reason is actually an economic one, which is that the use of alt tech actually keeps big tech in check a lot more than you may realize. Ask yourself this: why can't Facebook take advantage of its monopoly to start charging users $10 a month to continue using their service? Well, the answer is very simple, because Facebook doesn't actually have a service monopoly. Gab offers basically the same services that Facebook does for the same price. Free. It is not a monopoly of service, but rather it is simply a large market share of users. If Facebook were to do something so incredibly stupid as to charge for a service that many people are already questioning whether or not it's worth using for free, well then, what would happen to that market share? The answer is that Gab servers would crash. Okay, but seriously now, Gab would get absolutely flooded with new users at a rate that would make the 2020 migration look like absolutely nothing. Torba would have to likely invest in several times more servers than what he currently runs in order to keep up with the massive amount of people that would be leaving Facebook in this scenario. The so-called monopoly that Facebook has would very quickly reveal itself to be a house of cards or a paper tiger. And because of that, the mere existence of Gab means that Facebook actually does not have a monopoly and therefore cannot make an extremely anti-user decision like this. And Mark Zuckerberg knows this. He may not publicly admit it, but he knows that there are lines that he cannot cross just because of this mere fact that Gab exists. If he tried to even hint that he would do something as crazy as try to charge some kind of monopoly price, then that would be the death of Facebook. He knows that. Everyone would just flock to the next best alternative, and the internets would be absolutely flooded with discussions of the drama and chaos ensuing as a result of this migration. It matters not that Gab currently only has a tiny fraction of Facebook users. All Gab has to do is sit there and again, basically exist, and as a result of their mere existence, Facebook does not truly have a monopoly. And thus Facebook is limited in the type of changes it can make, because as soon as they do something stupid enough that pisses enough of their users off, even just 25%, and we would see a tidal wave of migration similar to what happened to MySpace back in the day, and Facebook would lose so much of everything that they have worked for. And therefore the true major reason you should support and use alt tech is because simply by having an account and being a user on alt tech sites, your data is backed up to a competitor, and thus big tech is prevented from having a service monopoly by the mere action of that data existing, an action that by itself is enough to limit what big tech can get away with. So the mere presence of a competitor offering similar services means that big tech can only really slip up so much. And again, they know it, and they hate it. This is why you see so much idiotic propaganda often levied against alt tech sites, such as the propaganda used against Parler or Gab. The media establishment will cherry pick the worst and most extremist users that they can find on alt tech, and then they'll publish a ridiculous hit piece against them based on a blatant fallacy of composition, and use that to try and claim that the alt tech site itself is in support of said violent extremism, which of course isn't true. On the surface, these talentless hack journos making these propaganda claims will paint themselves as brave warriors against political extremists. But the truth is that it's all just a big grift. It's all just ludicrous propaganda in a lame attempt to attack their competition. They do it because they are afraid of losing power. And they should be afraid. They deserve to be afraid. And that's the biggest reason you should at the very least bookmark alt tech sites. Even if you find yourself not really using them, just having them in your pocket is good enough, or even just using them as a backup of your information is good enough, and it's far more effective at limiting the power of big tech than most would realize. Anyways, that's all for now. If you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe for more. Also be sure to follow me on my alt tech backups, mainly Odysee. Thanks for watching, till next time.